everybody knows now because we're live. We're already live. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hag Sameach.
Hag Sameach.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
It's Shabbat for everyone who observes Shabbat. It's the end of Passover now at sunset for some people, or tomorrow night sunset, depending on whether you observe 7 or 8 days of the Pesach holiday. And for environmentally conscious Americans, it is also Earth Day today. So it's a nice confluence of events, just like we had Pesach, Easter, and Ramadan as a confluence today as well. So we will celebrate the earth and celebrate the Exodus and the themes of Passover as the holiday comes to a close. I hope all of you had a meaningful Pesach week, beginning last Shabbat with the beginning of the holiday. As you can tell, Cantor Iris is off this evening, so it's just me and you and our guest joining us, of course, via live stream. So I thought we would begin with a melody of American freedom songs that celebrate liberation, that celebrate peace, and celebrate the earth. I often open my Seder with these songs as well. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. When it's Pesach, when we're free, I'm gonna let it shine. When it's Pesach, when we're free, I'm gonna let it shine. When it's Pesach, when we're free, I'm gonna shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the slaves in Egypt in his hands. He's got the slaves in Egypt in his hands. He's got the slaves in Egypt in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the big blue planet in his hands. He's got the big blue planet in his hands. He's got the big blue planet in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got you and me, brother, in his hands. He's got you and me, sister, in his hands. He's got you and me, brother, in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. Gonna join hands with everyone down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna join hands with everyone down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Lo yissa goy el goy chereb, lo yilmedu od milchama, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yissa goy el goy chereb, lo yilmedu od milchama, lo yilmedu od milchama. There's a appropriate reading for this Shabbat and Earth Day, actually on page 9 of our Siddur. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation, as we do on Earth Day. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal, so we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. For our call to worship, the Baruch Hu, page 28, we rise. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Leolam Vaed. Please be seated as we read together the English understanding of the next prayer on page 31 that recognizes the cycle of the seasons and even the daily cycle of light and darkness. Together, praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Ravim. On page 33, wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and a living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Let's read the V'ahavta in English interpretation together this evening. Page 37. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. Of course, we sing Mi Chamocha each and every week. In fact, at each and every prayer service. And it is a celebration, a constant celebration of our freedom. But now at the end of Pesach, it's particularly relevant and important, or might say added emphasis, because the end of Pesach celebrates that moment of liberation, crossing over from slavery to freedom. And as I pointed out at the Pesach celebration on Zoom last week to our religious school students, in that story of liberation, it's not difficult to find and raise up women's voices, because they're there in the Torah, not in the Haggadah, but they are in the Torah retelling, the midwives and their role, for example. And maybe most of all, well, besides Bat Pharaoh, besides the daughter of Pharaoh, who actually saved Moses' life and helped raise him, so too did Miriam, Moses' sister. So as we sing the Mi Chamocha this evening, we'll do so in the context of Miriam's song, the song by Debbie Friedman that tells Miriam's story. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove was one which sang our history. With every strand and every thread she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances toward the light. Here we go. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamoch nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseh feleh, nora tehilot oseh feleh. When Miriam stood upon the shore and gazed across the sea, the wonder of this miracle she soon came to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march to the promised land. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. And Miriam the prophet took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in voice, she sang with praise and might. We've just lived through a miracle, we're going to dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamoch nehedar b'kodesh, norah tehilot osef ele, norah tehilot osef ele. Yay, Miriam. On page 43, let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. On page 44, the bottom song is Yismachu. We don't do it quite as often as V'shamru, but it's always good to keep it in the mix. It too is an upbeat Sephardic influence song. Yismechu b'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, b'korei honeg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, b'korei honeg Shabbat. Aham mekadeshei, Mikadeshei Shevi Shabbat, Kulam Yispehu, Yispehu v'tangu mituvecha Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemdat yamim, oto karata zechel ma'aseh v'reshit. Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei honeg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat, V'korei honeg Shabbat. Now, it's even more rare for us to do the alternative to the Amidah that is in the prayer book. It's called Magen Avot, the middle of page 64. Magen Avot is sometimes sung in traditional congregations as an added, concise form of the Amidah, sometimes in place of the repetition of the Amidah. It's also, according to Jewish law and custom, a condensed version that you can say if you're in a situation where reciting the full Amidah, which is very long on weekdays, but still rather extensive on Shabbat, goes from 18 benedictions to 7 on Shabbat. If you're in a situation that circumstances do not permit you to do the full Amidah, you can still fulfill your obligation by doing that. And I'll also mention that in this one paragraph is a hint on every line of one of the different benedictions of the Amidah. So, for example, the first benediction of the Amidah is called Avot. Well, you see it there in the second word, Magen Avot. And as you go down, you will see Meitim, Hakadosh, Shabbat Kodsho, and so forth. So there are subtle hints of each benediction of the Amidah together. And it's a very, very pretty melody as well that goes like this. Magen Avot Bidvaro, Michaye HaKol B'mamaro, Ha'el HaKadosh She'en Kemohu, Hameniach Le'amo, Bayom Shabbat Kodsho, Kivam Ratza Lehaniach Lahem, Kivam Ratza Lehaniach Lahem, Lefanav Navod Birav Afachad, V'nodeh Lishmo B'chol Yom Tamid, Mehon HaBrachot, El HaHodaot, Adon HaShalom, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Mivarek Shevihi, Umeniach B'kedusha, Le'amedu Shnei Honei, Zecher Lemase, Lemase Bereshit. In the reading, if we just jump back to page 59, in honor of the earth. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch Atah Adonai, Hatov Shimcha Ulecha Na'eh Lehodot. And we end with a prayer of peace. Things are not getting better in war-torn Ukraine, they're getting worse. And our prayers for peace, and not only ours, but all over the world, need to be raised up even more. On page 61, grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Baruch Atah Adonai, Hamivarech et Amo Yisrael, Ba'Shalom. Now at the end of the Amidah, our thoughts turn to those of our loved ones in need of healing and all those in need of these same prayers. Thinking especially in our congregational family this evening, Pearl Waxman and Fred Cohen. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu hu yishlach bimhera רפואה שלמה, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, ונאמר אמן. מי שברך אבותינו מקור הברכה לאמותינו, may the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lehavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. The sages taught that the message of Pesach should be internalized in two different ways. The first is that collectively we should see ourselves as if we too came out of Egypt, that we too came out from slavery toward freedom. When we say that in a collective sense, it means that we're not free until everyone is free and the work of freedom continues. But the sages told us we should internalize the message as well, individually, and think about the ways in which we're weighed down, the ways in which we may even be enslaved to small things, to narrow things, and seek that personal liberation as well. So with those thoughts in mind, we pause for a few moments of our own silent prayer. Avadim hayinu, ata bnei chorim, bnei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata bnei chorim, bnei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata bnei chorim, bnei chorim. We were slaves, now we are free. Avadim hayinu, ata bnei chorim, bnei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata bnei chorim, bnei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata bnei chorim, bnei chorim. So let's explore this confluence of Earth Day and Passover, Pesach, the end of Pesach. Tomorrow there will be demonstrations in many cities around the country that are called Fight for Our Future. That's the rubric that these demonstrations will take place, urging our government to take more decisive action concerning climate change. If you follow the developments, every time the United Nations issues a report, and one came out just a few weeks ago, the warnings by scientists all over the world who join in this report become more and more dire. But yet, where do we stand on this Earth Day? I remember 2 years ago when I joined the board of Green Faith, the ecumenical environmental organization, that we were tasked, a small group of us clergy, with writing a religious response to the Green New Deal legislation that had been introduced by some progressive members of Congress, just as Biden was taking office. Where is the Green New Deal legislation today? It's not anywhere, because it has become, sadly enough, politically toxic. Yes, it overreached perhaps in some ways, but it was trying for a holistic approach that welded environmental and economic affairs together. But President Biden came into office promising, if not a Green New Deal, then substantial climate change legislation. Understanding that it's only if governments, ours and governments around the world, and major corporations take decisive action, will things get better. And where is that legislation today? It's not dead, but it's stalled. It's not moving forward for lots of political reasons that we're not going to go into now. But on this Earth Day, we think about the fact that we're here not just to think about ourselves. I think that all of us in this sanctuary and at home will get through it. We're seeing the effects of climate change, but not the worst ones. When is that going to occur? When I think about the world that my grandson will inherit, I begin to shake a little bit, because I know that in 25 and 50 years, the effects of climate change are going to be even more drastic. Psychologically, we often only react to what is a clear and present danger. So we get upset when we see certain terrible storms, fires, and then we go to a certain stasis again. And it's very hard to motivate people for something which is a future danger, but not a clear and present danger. But on this Earth Day, at least, let's remind ourselves of the urgency of that. And let's also reflect on the fact that this holiday of Passover dramatically reminds us of our connection to the earth. No matter where we live or what our lifestyle is. There are 3 names to this holiday, and every one of them has an earth connection. The first and most basic name, even before there was an Exodus, there was Chag HaAviv. There was a spring holiday. Every culture has seasonal festivals, and so did ancient Judaism. So we celebrate the arrival of spring. You can't help but celebrate the beautiful weather like today. It was so beautiful, and the flowers and the trees emerging, that stirs us and new life being born. So Hag Aviv, we celebrate the seasons and particularly the spring. The second name of this holiday is Hag HaMatzot. And it's about the ancient practice of eating unleavened bread that our scholars tell us that predates the Exodus as well. It's the farmer's holiday. Because what are farmers doing in ancient Israel now? They are waiting for the harvest that they've already planted, and the barley is the first grain that is ripening now. And so in order to be spiritually prepared, you cleaned out the chametz, the leavened from last year, the spring cleaning, to make way for the new harvest. And 7 weeks from now, approximately 7 weeks from now, will be the second and most important grain harvest of all, wheat, corresponding roughly with Shavuot, and that's not a coincidence either. Yes, these all have historical significance, but we're celebrating the earth and its bounty, barley, wheat, and the first grains that sustain our life. So it's a farmer's holiday. Our ancestors who were farmers were very close to the earth, and the third name is Chag HaPesach. But Pesach refers in the Torah to the paschal lamb that was sacrificed. The blood was smeared on the door lintels and passing over. But what is it that is the central ritual? It's the eating of the lamb. That is because Chag HaPesach, which also has deep, deep roots, was the shepherd's holiday. When are lambs born? In the spring. Now. So it's a celebration of the birth of new life for shepherds as well. So you see a seasonal holiday, a farmer's holiday, a shepherd's holiday, and then you get the Exodus story, the rabbinic holiday, and that is added as a layer. It becomes not just the birth of nature, but it's the birth or the rebirth of a people as well. But this ties us so intimately to the land, and I'll add one more thing. In our prayers, we make the shift now from praying from rain to dew, because in these cycles of ancient Israel, this is when the rains end and the dew becomes the life-sustaining moisture. Just more evidence of how closely we're tied in our prayers and in our Torah text to the land itself. So very special and very appropriate that Earth Day and the end of Pesach coincide this year. And I'll conclude with one more reading from my quite large Pesach supplement that I've accumulated over the years of special readings and music for the Seder, some of which I did last Saturday night in the congregational celebration. But this one I didn't read, but it's particularly appropriate for today. You'll see why. It's written by a colleague and friend of mine in environmental matters, rabbinic colleague, Warren Stone, Rabbi Warren Stone. I will credit him. And it's called If the Earth Could Speak. And this is a reading that he wrote to be done when you dip the parsley into the salt water, the green into the salt, and think about the fact that when you're doing that, one interpretation, particularly relevant for environmentalists today, is that you're lamenting in your tears not just the slavery, but the earth itself. The green symbolizing the earth, the salt water, the tears. And so he writes, as you dip the beauty of greens into the water of tears, please hear my cry. Speaking of the earth, can't you see that I am slowly dying? My forests are being clear-cut, diminished by my diverse and wondrous creatures, birds of the sky and beasts of the field, small and large, are threatened with extinction in our lifetimes. My splendid, colorful flora and fauna are diminishing in kind. My tropical places are disappearing before us, and my oceans are warming. Don't you see that my climate is changing, bringing floods and heat, more extreme cycles of cold and warm, all affecting us and all our creation? It doesn't have to be. You, all of you, can make a difference in simple ways. You, all of you, can help reverse this sorrowful trend. May these waters into which you dip the greens become healing waters to soothe and restore the earth. Amen. As we open the ark now for the Aleinu, page 282 on the bottom, please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגמור עלינו ככל עמונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נותן שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומי, הוא אלוהינו הנו, אמת מלכנו אפסולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום והשבות אדוני הוא האלוהים, מהשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינו. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
On this Shabbat, we now call to mind in love and reverence the Yortzeit of Emmeline Levy, mother of Michael Levy, Isaac Greenspan, father of Kimberly Melman, Sophie Cohen, mother of Annette DeMarco, Hanyu Patenik, mother of Boris Fuderin, Philip Schooler, father of Noah Schooler, Sylvia Bellison, mother-in-law of Melissa Bellison, Benjamin Goldstein, father of Barbara Schwartz, my grandfather. For all those close to our hearts, and for all those for whom there may be no one to say Kaddish, we join in the Kaddish on page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'aloma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. Behayechon uvyomechon uvchaye techol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. Shabbat morning Torah study takes place tomorrow morning, and I will not hide from you the fact that it will be very sad, very graphically sad, as we read about the destruction of the first temple and ancient Judea at the hands of the Babylonians. This whole year has been about the rise and fall of ancient Israel, and now we're getting to the fall. We've already observed the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel, and now at the end of the book of Kings and in a chapter 2 from Jeremiah, we will read about the end of ancient Judea and the Babylonian exile as we start to approach the end of our year-long study. Religious school, confirmation, also resume this Sunday. And I wanted to mention that Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Commemoration Day, always comes rapidly after Pesach. And so it will occur this coming week, during the week, and we will observe it as we always do at the Shabbat immediately after next Friday. And our rather active B'nai Mitzvah season, spring season, begins next week also with the first of what will be 4 B'nai Mitzvah in the next few weeks. And so we look forward to the Bat Mitzvah of Hannah Rack next Shabbat morning. I'd like to conclude with a brief story and song. My son Nadav suggested that I mention this at services tonight because of Earth Day in particular. And over at Arbor Terrace, where my mom lives, a little mourning dove, well, actually a pair of mourning doves, built a nest right outside of my mom's living room window. So my mother's had a bird's eye view, literally, of this mourning dove team building a nest, and then behold, an egg was laid. That first egg, we don't know what happened. A second egg was laid, and it did hatch. And my mother has been observing day after day the mother mourning dove, first sitting on the egg and then sitting at the nest and protecting that little chick as it grew. It started to develop some feathers and started to grow a little bit, but it didn't move too much, and the mother was there faithfully and faithfully. And lo and behold, was it yesterday? Yesterday, my mother looked, and the baby had flown the coop, so to speak. And the mother now was free as well, so a new life had begun. And my mother was a little bit in mourning about the mourning dove and this drama that has played out. So Nadav said, you should tell that story, and then you should sing Tree of Life. It was a nice thought. The Tree of Life is our Torah symbol for the earth, for Gan Eden, for paradise. It's also what we call the Torah. It serves as a metaphor for both, but it's also cross-cultural because almost every culture has an idea of a tree of life symbolizing the earth as well. So Nadav had written an email. Maybe the rabbi will sing that song, and we'll tell him that we did that. Try to raise that and get in the right key. That would help. It is a tree